Today I'm going to provide you with some informative information related to the standards and assessments. I will also say I pride myself in never standing in between people in lunch and towards the end of their day so that they can move on with their next order of events. My name is Sasheen Phillips. I am from the Ohio Department of Education, and I serve as the Senior Director for the Center of Curriculum and Assessment, which includes standards, curriculum and assessment, early learning and school readiness, as well as exceptional children. So as indicated, today I want to provide you with a variety of updates. My intention and hope is that you will leave this session with at least one new piece of information that you may not have had when you entered into this meeting room at this time. The primary focus will center around standards and assessments K-12, but I will touch upon information related to early learning as well as higher education so that you can truly see the coherence and connections that are made from birth to post-secondary. The first thing I wanted to do was to present to you the transition timeline. I wanted to show you this because as we have talked about transitioning to the new standards and the assessments, we truly have been talking about it, looking at it through the lens of 4 different stages. But when we think about the course of the school years, to move to full implementation, we have actually have embraced around 4 to 5 years for us to make this transition to our new standards and assessments. You're aware that in June 2010, our state board adopted our new learning standards, which included our English language arts and mathematics standards for K-12, as well as our science and social studies. And at that time and into the 11 and 12 school year, we really focused on phase 1, which was around communication and awareness, providing an understanding of what is actually expected within these standards, as well as what is some comparisons between the similarities and differences between the existing standards and the new standards. All the while, we engaged in true planning around the development of assessments aligned to these new standards and worked with the different consortia for ELA and math. During that time period, we continued to administer our OAA and OGT assessments, which were aligned to the 2001 and 2002 standards respectively, as it relates to science, social studies, ELA, and math. At the latter part of 2011-12 and entering into last year, we began to move into phase 2, which its primary focus was around alignment and refinement. Now that we have an understanding of the standards, we want to act upon them. So we were encouraging activities such as gap analyses between your existing curriculum and the new standards. And then in addition, looking at ways that you can begin to redesign your instruction to be informed by the new learning standards. We also provided some curriculum supports, alignment toolkits and curriculum revision toolkits as you made your way towards finalizing the alignment and engaging in revision. During that time period, we chose to work with the PARC Consortia, which is comprised of other states, to develop our ELA and math assessment. And then also, we are working at the state level to develop our science and social studies standards. The assessments that continue to be implemented and administered, of course, were the OAA and OGT, which are based on our existing standards and supported by our accountability system. But we truly saw last year as phase 2, alignment and refinement. From the latter part of last year and entering into this year, we see this as phase 3, alignment and initial transition. Many, if not most, districts are finished with the alignment and revision work of their curriculum and instructional to the new standards. But we call it initial transition because we're not fully transitioning to our new educational system. The new educational system is comprised of our new learning standards and our next generation assessments. Because we're not implementing our next generation assessments this year, that means we have started the transition, but we're not in complete implementation mode. So at this time, many, if not most districts during this school year are implementing their newly revised curriculum aligned to the new learning standards. And we are continuing to engage in our final elements of assessment development in preparation for the first administration of our next generation assessments in the 14-15 school year. What we've also done to help to promote this transition and alignment is to take the Ohio graduation test and the OAA and to incorporate items that are dually aligned. That means the items are aligned to both the existing and the new standards. And then we have our accountability system, which still addresses the OAA and OGT. As we move into our 14-15 school year, we do see ourselves in a complete transition and full implementation mode, because all of the districts will be implementing new curriculum aligned to the new standards, as well as our next generation assessments will then be administered at elementary, secondary levels. So then, coupled with that, we will inform our new accountability system with the new assessments. So as we think about that transition, I wanted to look at the updates that I provide to you in for standards and assessments through two different lenses. In terms of standards and assessments, what should you be doing? I'm going to give you information about some things we are working on to support you. At the same time, we're going to focus on what should be occurring at the local levels. When I transition to the assessments, then I'll start talking about some things in relation to what we're doing at the state level to prepare for the administration of the new assessments. So when we say what should you be doing, implementing the standards. As I stated in the previous slide, the stage we're in is around implementing the newly revised curriculum. We believe that at this time, at all grade levels, K through 12, the newly revised curriculum should be implemented. And you can feel free to do so without reservation and believing that you're not preparing your students for the OAA and OGT that they are taking. They will be well prepared for the OAA and OGT if you transition to the new learning standards. So we are strongly encouraging you to do so. We, in addition, are supporting that all districts really look at working in the area of building their technological readiness and incorporating technology into instruction as well as assessment. I'll say it again, integrating instruction or technology into instruction as well as assessments. We're not really saying we want our students to be completely divorced of technology until they enter an assessment environment. Rather, we want their instructional environment to mirror the assessment environment. This means, as you're designing instruction, we would like for you to integrate technology in an appropriate, ethical manner and to create it so that it's providing a quality environment for our students so that they can understand the relevancy to the technology that you're incorporating and not seeing it as an add-on, but that it fosters learning, it opens up the door for opportunities for you to bring the real world into your classroom, and it creates situations where students are opening their eyes to different opportunities, but it's also helping them to create ways to demonstrate what they know in terms of the mastery of content that they've achieved. The last component that we see as a primary focus is around communication and outreach. Now, some of you may or may not believe this because I know it's hard for me, but there are some people out there who just really don't like the new learning standards. Go figure, I'm really not understanding that, but there are. So with that, from that respect, what we are doing is we are looking at providing communication and outreach to the field. Not so that we can take people who are in opposition and move them to the other side, but more so that we can be responsible in terms of being transparent and inform our educators and stakeholders across the state about what is exactly expected in the new learning standards. And this is what we are hoping and encouraging that you're doing as well. With all things, whenever there's change, you're going to have people who are going to embrace it, and then you're going to have people who may choose not to. But the valuable thing is that we ensure that we have taken on the role of providing guidance and information so that people can make informed decisions. When we talk about the standards and we provide outreach, the expectation and intent is not that the stakeholders leave saying, oh, now I can be an English teacher or a math teacher or science or social studies, but rather that they can feel empowered to know what the standards are communicating and how they will benefit the students in academia and real world. So when we think about the standards, we ask you to think about focusing on the shifts, the major shifts that are evident, such as that the standards are promoting rigor. And when we talk about rigor, it's not only having a deeper level of content knowledge, but being able to demonstrate that level of content knowledge in a variety of different ways, within a discipline, across disciplines, and connecting it to real world. The other component that we see that is a major shift is in the area of evidence, truly understanding what it means to support information that you share, so that you can use text or other resources to justify a position or to take a stance, but really understanding the power that evidence has. It can inform decision making, it can help you to grow, and also elevate and advance areas of weakness. The last component when we look at it is when we think about the information from, for example, the mathematical practices standards. They promote perseverance, problem solving, the ability to communicate accurate information and to engage in fluency in terms of operations and what you do, and to make connections to real world. This is truly relevant and pertinent for the area of mathematics, but it's also relevant for all other disciplines and the real world. So they're taking these life skills and understanding how they will help them to be more competitive, but allow them to access a variety of different information. As we move forward through the next year, our communications office at the department will continue to create supports that educators and districts can use. We encourage you to provide such resources as the National PTA, who has provided a parent guide on the standards to parents, which not only gives an explanation of the standards, but it also poses questions that parents could ask educators about the standards when they're talking about their students. To help our stakeholders and your stakeholders, business leaders, parents, and community members to feel empowered to know that they have an understanding of what is being taught in their area and local schools. In order to provide continued support, some of the professional learning opportunities that we are providing over the course of the year include early learning webinars. We hosted early learning webinars during this fall, and currently those webinars are posted on our ODE website if you weren't able to participate. The PowerPoint and the videos that truly talk about our transition to a new early learning infrastructure that includes new standards for birth to age 5, which address the domains of readiness, of general cognitive knowledge, as well as language and literacy, and social and emotional approaches to learning and physical health and well-being. But that structure also includes an early childhood comprehensive assessment system, which embraces a new kindergarten entry assessment, which will replace the crawl, as well as a formative assessment that is voluntary and optional for districts to use, but supports students at grades or ages 36 to 72 months. We also will host in the late fall and early spring subject-specific webinars in the area of mathematics and English language arts and social studies and science. We're also looking to develop ones in fine arts, foreign language, as well as our entrepreneurship and financial literacy, and our business non-career tech fields. This helps to provide guidance and support. We have reviewed and adopted new standards over the last couple of years, and we want to continue to provide outreach and support. In addition, I'm not sure if all of you are aware, but this past summer, our state board adopted what are called Career Connections Learning Strategies that were incorporated into the model curricula. The intent is not that they are something in addition to what you do, but they support the relevancy piece around instruction. They are housed within the content areas for the elementary, middle, and high school levels, and they truly promote ways that teachers can integrate strategies that allow you to connect academic content to career opportunities, so that our students begin to have awareness and understanding of the careers that are available, and then see how they can match their skill sets to areas of interest. In addition to the webinars, we will also have regional trainings. Regional trainings have occurred through early learning, and they have key PD networks such as the state support teams and working with the Department of Mental Health and the Department of Jobs and Family Services and the department are providing regional trainings. They operate in 3 different levels. The first level has been implemented this past fall, and it's providing an overview of the standards. And then the second and the third will dig deeper into the standards and the assessments, so that we're providing support on instructional design and also ways to help build capacity and gaining a deeper understanding of the expectations within the standards. In the spring, we will host trainings on instruction as it relates to English language arts, mathematics, and science and social studies. We will provide visions into practice. What does instruction actually look like that is aligned to our new learning standards? We also will provide opportunities for educators to convene and come together to review lessons and evaluate lessons for their quality, supported by a quality review rubric that we have designed. From this standpoint, this is something that you'll be able to take back and engage in professional conversations and opportunities with your colleagues on how to truly design effective lessons that truly address the alignment, the rigor, the instructional supports and assessments that students need in order to be successful. We also have our formative instruction modules, and throughout the last 2 days, if you've had an opportunity, we hosted sessions on the formative instructional practices. Those modules and information can be accessed through the fip.ohio website, .org website, but the key piece to it is the individuals and entities that have embraced these modules. We have approximately 75% of our Race to the Top districts that have taken on the formative instruction modules and utilize them in a blended learning format at their building and district levels. We have 50% at least of our non-Race to the Top districts that are utilizing these modules. It provides a deeper understanding of ways to monitor and evaluate students' progress towards meeting the expectations in the standards. The formative instructional modules are aligned to the standards, and they also foster an opportunity for communities of practice and professional growth around truly supporting ELA in math, science, and social studies at the early learning level all the way to high school. In addition, we are and have been providing over the last couple of years summer advanced placement workshops for advanced placement teachers, and we have addressed English, math, science, and social studies. This is a time for advanced placement teachers to collaborate, but also to receive training and support. Why is this important and valid? We have incorporated advanced placement into our educational system. It is an allowable coursework that can earn credit towards graduation, and the assessments will also be infused into the structure for graduation requirements as well. So the advanced placement tests that the students take, some of them actually will be able to be used to replace some of the existing state level assessments that we will have through our next generation assessment starting in 14-15. I spoke about it earlier. I just really wanted to reinforce that our Career Connections learning strategies are encompassed within the model curricula that we have for our students or for our educators. So we encourage you to take a look at those. And then in addition, we have posted in the areas of English language arts, mathematics, science, and social studies, what we call quality review rubrics. And these rubrics are used by educators as you begin to design and or evaluate lessons. Now, when we think about a rubric, we often think about a rubric from a quantitative standpoint. But look closely when we call it a quality review rubric, because the focus isn't about the numbers, the quantitative numbers. Oh, there are 4 domains, and so, oh, this domain you can get up to 4 points, and this one up to 3 points, and in this one, a person's lesson only received 2 points. It's not about the numeric number that's associated with the domain, rather about the qualitative information that you get on a lesson to determine its level of effectiveness. So instead of adding numbers to the rubric, we actually instead have another column next to the criteria that says this is a place where you provide evidence that shows this lesson effectively addressed this criteria. Or this is a place where you provide evidence that shows this lesson requires improvement when it comes to these pieces of criteria in terms of making it better and ensuring that it's more effective. When you can get that type of feedback, you can create more quality lessons which will truly inform the type of instruction that you're providing. We worked with other states to develop the ELA and math rubric, and currently we are one of the few states that actually have a rubric similar to this for science and social studies. So we encourage you to access these rubrics and to utilize them to inform your work. But we did not want the rubrics to just be there in isolation. So in late fall and early spring, we will support the rubrics with what's called an instructional toolkit. And with the instructional toolkit, that will encompass not only the rubric, but it will also include some sample model lessons. Not a large plethora of lessons, but more so some sample high-quality model lessons, as well as student work. And then other resources that you can use to support the professional conversations that you're going to have. So we created an alignment toolkit, a curriculum revision toolkit, and then we will have an instructional toolkit come spring. We also have performance-based assessment tasks. We have been working on those for the last couple of years at the elementary and high school level in the areas of English language arts, mathematics, and science. And at the high school level, we actually have them for career technical education as well. So the performance-based assessment task will be available for educators through the iLearn Ohio site in the spring of 2014. These are to be used for instructional purposes only. If you had an opportunity to attend one of the sessions that was facilitated by Lauren Montawar-Jones, you'll know that this also supports our task diet learning system, which embraces instructional tasks as well as assessment tasks that are aligned together. But the performance-based assessment tasks have been developed for elementary and the secondary level, high school, and they will be available on the iLearn Ohio site in the spring, early spring, January approximately of 2014. We also have a formative assessment portfolio, which includes portfolios of formative assessment strategies for the English language arts and mathematics disciplines at the middle school level. This will also be available on the iLearn Ohio site in the early spring of 2014. So what we've done is try to create a system where we're providing supports all the way that are informing instruction and are looked upon in a more formative nature. So your performance-based assessment tasks embrace elementary and high school, and then your formative assessment portfolios addresses the middle school level. Through Race to the Top, we were able to provide support at all different levels. Now, before I begin with the next generation assessments, are there any questions related to our standards implementation? Now, keep in mind, I know that it's the last session, but I really don't want you to feel as though this is a complete sit and get. So at any time, if you have questions, feel free to just raise your hand. You don't have to necessarily wait to the end. So with that, I figured I would touch upon an area that I'm sure none of you really want to know anything about because, I mean, it's not really on your radar at all, but I'll talk about it anyway. Yes? The question, and I'm going to try to paraphrase for you, the question on the table was around the technological readiness. And so if we're saying that we're not only talking about building the technological infrastructure, but the readiness of our students. So if we're expecting our students to have the instructional environment mirror our assessment environment, when should we do things like prepare our students to be able to type or to be able to communicate effectively with technology? And what we're saying is that should begin in the elementary level. The third grade assessment will be online, so it will be computer-based, so they will be expected to provide responses to that effect. So we are asking for that at this time, but we will get enough data too from the field test to help us to really see the level of readiness in those different arenas. But we would say start familiarizing it with your students now, even in kindergarten, so that they can start having some exposure to the technology that they're going to be using. Now let's see, who wants to hear about next generation assessments? You really do? Are you sure? I mean, I really thought, oh, well, maybe not. So here we are. Now, we are 1 year away from our assessments, but I figured, why don't we put it in the lens of what should we be doing? So these are the key areas that I'm going to focus on: elementary, middle, high school assessments, as well as graduation requirements. First thing, questions we get. Are we still a park state? As of October 29th at 12:55, we are still a park state. And we will stay a park state unless we are told anything different from the governor's office. So we are a governing member of the park state, of the park consortia. And so as a result, we are working with other states to develop our ELA and our ELA assessments for elementary, middle, and high school. We're working at the state level to develop our science and social studies assessments. But what you most likely will not hear is a large number of my staff talking about our assessments by calling them park. And the reason we are not calling them park tests is because our tests are next generation assessments. Park is the pathway that we use to develop our assessments for ELA and math. State developed is the process that we're using to create our science and social studies. Once the assessments are developed, they are ours, we own them. That's why we call them Ohio's next generation assessments. We're just using two different pathways for development, quite similar to what we did with our standards. But once they're ours, we own them. But right now, we are moving forward. The next thing, where are we going to be with our assessments? So let me talk to you about our elementary assessments and really show you what we're doing in the process. Picture it. The year 2012, 2013, what test did the kids take? They took the OAA and OGT, and it was aligned to the existing 2001 and 2002 standards for ELA, math, science, and social studies. Now, present day, We have, and this applies to our elementary, middle, and high school assessments. Now, present day, we will have OAA and OGT assessments that will include items that are dually aligned. What does that mean? The items are aligned to both the existing standards and the new learning standards. These items come from our existing item bank. They've already been aligned to our existing standards, and we conducted a review and analysis to determine the level of alignment of our items in the existing bank to the new learning standards. And those items are going to be used on our assessments. To what percentage will we have dually aligned items? We are working to reach 100%. We may not be able to reach 100% in every single case because we will have situations such as with reading, they're passage-based, and so every item may not be dually aligned, but we're not able to kind of switch out an item from a passage and use an item from another passage because it's dually aligned, because there would be a disconnect. So there may be some cases where a passage may not have all dually aligned items, but the vast majority of the items that will appear on the OAA and the OGT will represent items that are dually aligned. We don't see it as low as 50%. We see that we're going to be in upwards of 80 or 90% upwards of 80 or 90% or higher in terms of the items on the ELA, the math, the science and social studies assessments that will be administered this year for the OAA and OGT. Yes. Do you mean as they're written in the new learning standards? What I will tell you is that we are still keeping the same items that were developed as a band, but we are not creating grade level tests. They're still going to have a band, but we're not going to address anything that the students were not expected to learn from the existing standards. So if there was new content that was introduced at a grade level based on the new learning standards, but it wasn't expected in the existing standards, that content will not be addressed on our test. The other piece that we're doing is we know that at the middle school level at times, I believe, and the high school level, there are some questions about what content may or may not be on there. And so we're looking at providing guidance to the field about what content isn't there. I believe science might even have something that's up there to say, here's what you may want to look at. This is what this is what you can address when it comes to, for example, that middle column in the comparative analysis document. But then here's what you may just need to supplement a little bit just to make sure from the existing standards. Anything that we just say you may need to cover in addition to this would come from the existing standards, not the new standards. So we've tried to make it so that anywhere where there were differences between the existing and the new standards, we went with the existing standards. We didn't go with the new. So where you saw differences, we stayed with the existing standards. We didn't bring in the new content that was introduced in the new learning standards. Okay. Any other questions? Then we have the 2014-2015 school year. So if you recall, I said 2012, 2013, current assessments aligned to the existing standards. 2013, 2014, current assessment has dually aligned items to the existing and the new standards. 2014, 2015, new assessments aligned to the new learning standards. 14, 15, new assessments aligned to the new learning standards. So what do we mean by that? And the question on the table, high school assessments. What's the biggest question we get? Can you tell me exactly what assessment will this year's 9th graders, which will be 10th graders next year, which is the class of 2017, what test will they take? What test will the class of 2017 take to graduate? They will take the OGT. So this year's 10th graders will take the OGT, and this year's 9th graders, who will be 10th graders next year, will take the OGT. But what is the difference? This year's 10th graders in the 13-14 school year will take the OGT that includes items from the existing item bank that are dually aligned. Next year's 10th graders, which is the class of 2017, will take the Ohio graduation test that includes new items aligned to the new learning standards. Those are the big differences. We are creating new items for the OGT that will be administered to 10th graders in the 14-15 school year. So the class of 2017, which is this year's 9th graders, will take the Ohio graduation test as a graduation requirement, but that Ohio graduation test will have new items on it that are aligned to the new learning standards. That's different than what's going on this year, because remember, this year we're pulling from the same existing bank. Next year, everything is new, whether we're talking about the next generation assessments or the OGT. Yes. There will still, what will happen is, the way that it will occur is that the students will follow their cohort. So, and that's a good question, and that's what people are asking. So if you have created new items for the OGT and a student who is a 10th grader this year takes the OGT that's based on existing standards, if they are not successful in one or more parts, is what has been asked, when they take that assessment next year, will they have to take the one that is based on new items aligned to the new standards? They will take the one that's based on the existing standards. So we had already planned, prior to having to engage in new item development, we had already planned the phasing out process. So all the students 10th grade and earlier who took the OGT based on the existing standards will continue to take the OGT. We'll provide some guidance to that information. Mm-hmm. But that is a good point. That's what we did so that we wanted to make sure that we were consistent. Yes?
Still all paper pencil?
Yes, it is. Even though we are aligning to the new learning standards, the Ohio graduation test will still be paper pencil. We will not go to a computer-based version. Okay. The next piece about the the high school assessments is the question on the table. What is going to happen in 14-15? Elementary and middle will transition to the next generation assessments, which will include computer-based assessments for ELA, math, science, and social studies. For the high school assessments, the OGT will still be in place. This year, the OGT is the requirement for graduation for students 10, 11, and 12. Next year, the OGT will be a requirement for students at grades 10, 11, and 12. We are finalizing the policy information that will go out about the next generation assessments as it relates to high school. So, for example, since the class of 2017 will be in high school when the next generation assessments begin, will they have to also take those? We're going to determine how that will be handled, what flexibility will be afforded to them, since those assessments will not be used as a graduation requirement. But right now, the class of 2017 is the one that's taking the OGT. We're continuing to work forth with our state board and legislature so we can get legislative language change so that the class of 2018 can go into high school using the next generation assessments as a graduation requirement. Which leads me to my next slide. Now, don't throw anything at me, but graduation requirements. I here today wanted to show you this next slide that's not it. I don't have a slide on the graduation requirements and all the components. And unfortunately, the only reason I do not have a slide on it is because we are just like 2 weeks shy of when the graduation proposal will be released. The State Board of Education has assembled what they call a graduation committee. And the graduation committee is comprised of state board members and members of the legislature. And the intent is for them to propose or create a graduation proposal plan. That plan will be released at the November board meeting. So that plan will be released at the November board meeting. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to share that plan with you at this time. But what I can share with you are some things that are proposed within the plan that haven't remained unchanged over the cycle. So for example, their plan is to address the series of end of course assessments that students would have to take, the courses that need to be completed, alternative pathways for proficiency, endorsements or recognition systems, as well as transition plan. What has been agreed, what has still remained the same and has not remained unchanged, is the committee has still agreed that the students would take the 10 end-of-course exams to graduate. That is still in place. The other requirement, the other thing that has remained in place are the course requirements. As stipulated in Senate Bill 311, that is still there, and that's still present. What is also in place is the student's ability to retake assessments if they don't perform well towards graduation. Retake opportunities are still being made available. Alternate pathways to proficiency is included in there, so that this is a way that if a student doesn't meet a certain level of achievement, that they could use an alternate way to show that they are prepared and are ready to graduate. The graduation points that we talked about over the last 6 months around, for example, students taking an assessment, and then let's say it's an Algebra 1 assessment, and they earn a level of a 3 on that assessment, that they would bank 3 graduation points. The graduation points has remained as well. So those are some of the things that have continued to remain. New things they've added is to add a council that will create an opportunity for students to receive endorsements or recognitions on their diploma. So for example, a career ready endorsement, which students can currently earn now by earning, for example, a 18 on the English, a 21 on the reading, and a 22 on the math ACT, with comparable scores on SAT, AccuPlacer, and Compass. That document is posted on the OBR website, but if students earn those scores, they can have a remediation-free status. That does not mean they have guaranteed admission into college, but what it does mean is that in those academic areas, they are guaranteed to be able to go to first year credit-bearing coursework without remediation. Once PARCC is administered and available, PARCC will become the 5th test. So they have ACT, SAT, Compass, AccuPlacer, and then PARCC will be the 5th test. And they will be able to earn a 4 or higher on the English 3 and or Integrated 3 or Math or Algebra 2. And if they earn a 4 or higher, they will have a college-ready determination. This Diploma Endorsement Council will not only address career readiness, it'll also address, college readiness, it'll also address career readiness in ways that students can perform effectively on a career field assessment or earn an industry credential and receive an endorsement, as well as honoring honors diplomas that are still available, but then something new to really open up the doors where there may be some endorsements that are not even available yet that we now may want to acknowledge and recognize for our students, such as a biliteracy seal, which in essence is when a student has shown and demonstrated a level of proficiency and mastery of a second language. Whether their first language is English and then they acquired a second language such as Chinese or Somali or Spanish, or their first language is not English and they have acquired English as their second language in a proficient and masterful manner. So these are some of the things that are being implemented. As I stated, this proposal will be available and released in November at the November board meeting. Other assessment updates, things we wanted to share with you. The first is, when it comes to test blueprints, you notice I put test blueprints are posted. Test blueprints are posted for the ELA and math, science, and social studies assessments. You can go to our ODE website for the science and social studies blueprints for the new assessments, and you can also go to our website and click on a link to go to the PARCC website for the math and ELA test blueprints and test specifications. Phase 1 item development is complete. We are complete in terms of phase 1 item development for our ELA and mathematics assessments. And we are close to completion with our science and social studies. We are ready. Will we have a test in 2014, 2015? We will have a test in the 2014, 2015 school year. We will have the 2-part summative, which includes the performance-based and end of year, and that is for ELA, math, science, and social studies. And then for the ELA and math assessments, there will also be a mid-year assessment that will be available. The mid-year will be optional, but that will be available as well. And the intention is Ohio is working and has been working on its budget so that we can support the whole assessment system. So the mid-year, the 2-part summative would be supported financially by the state so that districts would not have to incur the cost. In terms of field test preparation, where are we at this point? Districts who are a part of, districts who have been invited to be a part of the field test have been notified and contacted. We will have a field test in ELA, math, science, and social studies at the elementary, middle, and high school level in the spring of 2014. They have been contacted at this time. We will have the field test in a paper, pencil, and computer version, or computer-based version for ELA and math, and we will have a computer-based version for science and social studies. The dates and times, if you haven't had the opportunity to attend the session on Next Generation Assessments with Mr. Larry Early, the dates and times for the ELA and mathematics, the PBA assessment, performance-based assessment, will be administered March 24th through April 11th. And then the end of year or end of course assessment will be administered May 12th to May 6th, or I'm sorry, May 12th to June 6th. When it comes to science and social studies, we will have an administration period around the same time. March 24th through April 18th will be the field test window for science and social studies. And we will also have a field test window for the end of year for science and social studies, May 5th through the 16th. So for all of them, ELA, math, science, and social studies, we will have a field test for the performance-based assessment as well as the end of year assessment. The performance-based will take place March through April. The end of year, end of course will take place May through June. And those dates are and will be posted on our ODE website. One of the other key features is with the science and social studies test, when we field test, everybody in the state will have access to the field test for science and social studies. So during that field test period, everybody in the state will have access. There will be provisions and guidance and information on how you should access the field test and how you should use the field test, because there will be some structure to it, but everybody will have access to the field test. For the ELA and math assessments, not all districts in the state will participate in the field test for math and ELA. But during the time that we have a field test for math and ELA, we will also have a practice test available for everyone else who is not a part of the field test. So during the field test period, you will have access to assessments for math, ELA, science, and social studies, whether you're actually chosen to participate in the field test itself or whether you are accessing a practice test. All of that will be available in the spring of 2014. Any questions? Yes? There are sample questions for the ELA and math that are currently posted on the Park website, and we will continue to have sample questions posted as we move forth. Science and social studies, if I recall, we don't have sample items posted right now, but we will look to have some in the spring. And then what will also happen is, even since the field test window will be available for everybody for science and social studies, once that field test window closes, of course you won't have access to those items anymore. But what will happen is late summer, early fall, a practice test will be made available for science and social studies, as well as for ELA and math. Yes? The dates for next year's test for the next generation assessments, our latest date, our latest time right now would be summer 2014, but what we're trying to push for is early spring. What I will tell you is at this time in the fall, I don't have recommendations, but what we do plan to have is, even if we can't give you the set dates, in early spring, like around February, March, we'll provide guidance on setting your schedule for next year, at least thinking about those windows of time. As you're aware, with our assessments right now, at least with ELA and math, you will have 2 assessment windows that are approximately 4 weeks each, and you'll have one in the fall and one in the spring. And right now, for the fall in particular, that one really would be just for high school because they have block scheduling. So those high schools that have block scheduling, we're creating a way where we can accommodate the fact that you will have end of course assessments that you will need at the fall, so we'll have that. So we will provide that information. Yes? Right now, all the tests will be on the computer in 2014, 2015. But the follow-up question that I see I'm going to add on yours, the question was, so will all the tests be computer-based in 2014, 2015? Yes, ELA, math, science, and social studies. But the caveat is, will there be a paper pencil available? Yes, there will be a paper pencil version available. But that will be available based on a district or community school's ability to demonstrate the work and effort that they have taken to get ready, but they're still not there yet. So that's really also in relation to the technology readiness tool. So if you have been working, but you still aren't in a position where you can offer the assessments online, then we will also be able to know that through the information you're putting in the technology readiness tool, and that will help us to determine if you're going to need a paper pencil version. We are working to have the paper pencil version of the test and the computer based to be very similar as much as possible. And that's why we also are field testing both the paper pencil version and a computer based version. Yes. Let me see if I captured. I'm going to try to paraphrase what you stated so everybody can hear. Your question is in relation to the paper pencil. And you had stated at one time it was believed that the districts would have to incur the cost if they don't have a paper pencil version. What I can tell you, as much as possible for our system, we are looking to be able to try to pay for it financially so the districts do not have to incur the cost. But what we are saying is that districts have to really demonstrate that they've made efforts towards getting ready, and they can't just rest on their laurels and have us do this, because the other piece is the cost implications. We're now comparable, but when we add in the paper pencil, that actually elevates the cost, so that could lessen our ability to do other things around the assessments. Yes? Okay. Very good question. I love it when people bring it out because I was getting ready to get it. Well, and let me rephrase it for you, because the question on the table for those who didn't hear was he really wanted to ask exactly what tests will this year's 9th graders, who will be 10th graders next year, the class of 2017, in essence, what assessments will they take in the 2014-2015 school year? They will, you're correct, take the OGT aligned to the new standards. That is for graduation requirements. They will also take the PSAT in the fall of 2014 in approximately the month of October. And we will provide more information about the PSAT in the spring, but right now all 10th grade students will take that in the fall. The last one is around the next generation assessments. And that's where we're working on our final policy decisions around that, because we are trying to create as much flexibility as possible for our students so that they don't have to be inundated with so many tests, especially since the next generation assessments for those 10th graders will not be applied to their graduation requirements. So we're looking at offering flexibility, understanding that in whatever situation we would have, if a student has already completed coursework for end of course exams that we have, we will not make them go back and take those exams. They are already fine. The other piece is that we would not have them take all 10 or 7 end of course exams. If they had to take it, it would be no more than 3, but we're still looking at that from a flexibility lens to see what we can do to make it so that it may not have to be a requirement that they take those next generation assessments if they're taking the OGT. What we are still encouraging, though, at the district level is, since now we are working with end-of-course assessments instead of end-domain assessments like the OGT, many districts, if not all districts, offer the courses for which we have exams, like English, the English courses, the American History, American Government, all the math courses. So as a result, you offer final exams or end-of-course exams. We are still encouraging that you replace those exams with the state level end of course exams. So they could inevitably take those exams, but for local purposes only, not for state level purposes. And there was also a question about the graduation requirement. There was one time where there was a suggestion that a percentage of the course grade, a percentage of the test will be a part of the course grade. That is not in there as a requirement for graduation. That's an option at the local level, but that is not something that the state will be imposing. So the big picture, what will happen? 10th graders definitely take the OGT next year, this year's 9th graders who will be 10th graders next year will definitely take the OGT aligned to the new learning standards, we'll take the PSAT, and then we are working on the policy decisions around the next generation end of course exams or two-part summatives that they'll have to take, okay? The other component, and then around that, we are also encouraging that districts still use the end of course exams to fulfill their district level final end of year exam. Yes? I'm sorry? Right now, no, because right now the policy decision is for all high school. We're working on policy decisions for that because remember, this year's 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade are taking the OGT as a graduation requirement. So that will be used towards graduation. The next generation assessments will not be. So we're encouraging them to use them for district level purposes, and we're providing some policy guidance. But right now, we've always said that the next generation assessments, we're really going to start with the class of 2017 and beyond. It would not impact the class of 2017 or earlier. Right now, at this time, we are working so that this year's 8th graders, which will be 9th graders next year, we're working towards the fact that they will be able to take the end of course exams. We still need legislative language as it relates to the graduation requirements for that to occur, but that's what we're working towards. Any other questions? We talked about the practice tests, that you will have practice tests available in the spring for the science, for the ELA and the mathematics standards, or I'm sorry, mathematics assessments. And you will have a practice test in the fall for the science and social studies. And there will be sample items. Technology readiness tool, technology readiness tool, technology readiness tool. I can't stress this enough. It addresses preparing yourselves from a technology standpoint for instruction as well as assessment. We are encouraging all districts and community schools to submit and populate their information. Not just access it, but to complete the information, all of the information on the tool, so that we can have the guidance. Please understand, when we're thinking about policy that we can put in place or how we can support districts in terms of helping them move towards the level of being technologically ready, we want to make sure that we give you that information, we get that information from the technology resource tool. And we can't do that if we don't have the information. There is guidance on the site for those that are a part of the field test. So there is guidance on how to schedule your field test sessions. We're continuing to have different items, but also there will be an online functionality opportunity that will take place in the fall of this year. And basically what this is it's not an opportunity to look at, per se, the content of items. This will focus on science and social studies, but this is an opportunity for educators and students to access sample items online, to get used to the functionalities and how they work. This not only is beneficial for students taking the science and social studies test, it's also beneficial for our students when they're taking the ELA and math, because the functionalities will be very comparable to one another. So we will provide information on this opportunity, but please look out for it because it will be made available. So as I ask you questions, I want to ask you some questions to see if you have new information. Now, the first one, should we continue to transition to the new learning standards? Oh, I hear some doubt. Should we continue to transition to the new learning standards? Yes. All right. Okay. What will the assessments be ready in 14-15? Yes. What assessment will the class of 2017 take to graduate? Very good. Now, I have to tell you that I do apologize because this is a quick assessment to see your knowledge. Now, it is not actually modeling the type of assessments that we're moving towards, because I did ask you dichotomous questions, or just right or wrong. But because I know you really wanted that type of assessment, when you leave at the end of this presentation, I have a paper pencil version, or I have a link that you will complete. And then you will provide me evidence as to how you know that this is the case and this is what we're supposed to do. Okay, I'm just joking. I won't really have that for you. But I wanted to be able to provide you with this information. That's what I have you at this time. Before we break, I just want to open the floor up. If you have any questions, any comments, anything you think we should consider as we're transitioning, please feel free to share it with me at this time. Any questions? Yes. Very good question. And The answer is yes, they will have an opportunity to replace it. If you recall, we've talked previously and stated legislation indicates we have a series of end-of-course exams that we will create at the state level, but the state will also select end-of-course exams such as AP and IB exams that could be used to replace some of the assessments that we are offering in terms of end-of-course exams. I will tell you that a student who is taking coursework and assessments across the high school experience would not replace every single assessment with one of these, but some of them could be replaced from that standpoint. So that is going to be still made available. Yes. And what I believe you're asking is in terms of physical science, because it is a course and an end of course exam, when exactly that physical science end of course exam would be administered. And we are saying that that physical science exam would be administered at the high school level. But let me go to another area to say, we know that we have some kids who are participating in more of an accelerated track. And so they may be taking coursework in math or science, for example, in the 8th grade that is considered high school coursework. So maybe a physical science or maybe even an algebra 1. If they take that coursework at the middle school level, once they complete that coursework and we have exams, they'll be able to take that end of course exam. We would go to bank their points towards graduation until they get to high school. And then we're working with our accountability office so that what we can do is for that school that has students that are at the middle school level but taking high school coursework, that could possibly be reflected in the report card so that the high school isn't getting credit for that work, that the student could actually, the student score could actually get credit at their middle school level. You're welcome. Yes. The question on the table, to be clear, is for the social studies, because we know we will now have a 4 and 6 social studies assessment, will that assessment in 14-15 address grade banded content or grade specific content? And right now it will address grade specific content, so it'll address 6th grade content. I'm sorry? Well, what I can say is that thoughtful planning and understanding was looked at to determine when, in fact, we would actually have assessments for our students. And so it was decided that for social studies, it would be 4 and 6, and for science, it would be 5 and 8. And as much as possible, we were trying to create situations where at the middle school level, at the middle school and elementary level, that the students wouldn't go through that series of 4 assessments all over again, where you would have a situation where you would have math, ELA, science, and social studies all taking the test. So we kind of had to fluctuate in terms of where it would fall. Test fatigue and overload inform the process, but working with our education staff and working with our experts, we looked at the content to see, well, where would this best fall if ideally you couldn't place it like at an 8th grade or 7th grade? What would be the next place to go? Now, the 7th and there are just going to be some grades that will not have assessments that will be tested. So 7th and 8th grade content would not be tested at the state level, at least. The 6th grade content would be tested. Yes. Okay. And let me see. I'm going to try to say to the audience your question and make sure I communicate it clearly, and then I'll give a response. In essence, what I believe you're stating is, particularly at the elementary level, the primary focus has been on reading and math. And now, even though we've had a science test, we will have a 5th grade science test this year. And we understand that the content is more rigorous. At the same time, what is the guarantee that our students are going to be well prepared for the 5th grade test in terms of content because of the focus on reading and math, and now because of the focus, I'm paraphrasing and adding, on things such as the 3rd grade guarantee, where people are placing more of an emphasis on reading and literacy? How will we ensure that our science is going to be taken care of? And what I can say is we see that as a constant challenge, but what we are doing what we're doing at the department is, one, we're continuing to promote and emphasize the importance of transitioning to all of your standards and all of your content areas, not just ELA and math, but social studies and science as well. We're also working collaboratively in terms of providing supports and resources, and even this year we're moving to the level of really showing some of the interdisciplinary connections that really need to be made so that it's understood that what is going on in science could be infused into English language arts or mathematics, and what is also going on in mathematics and ELA or social studies, for example, could be infused in science, to understand the relationships between the two. We know it's a constant battle or change, but what we are saying to the field is science and social studies are just as important as ELA and mathematics. And this does continue to be a challenge, but we are trying to look at ways that we have the connections. One of the big things that we have too is the literacy standards, and I know it's only for 6 through 12, but the literacy standards in our ELA for other technical subjects is not expected to be an add-on, but to really understand when you work with these literacy skills, you're actually helping to better promote and gain a deeper understanding of those content areas. Yes? Well, what I would say is that for all of our tests, science and social studies and ELA and math, we will have the two-part summative, the performance-based and end of course. They all will roll into that grade, so we will be reporting on both of those. But there is a difference between the performance-based assessments that we will have with the two-part summative and the OPAP, excuse me, the OPAP or the performance-based assessment tasks that we will have that are released through the iLearn. The ones that are released through the iLearn are to support instructional purposes, but the two-part summative that we'll have for science, social studies, math, and ELA, where you'll have a performance-based and an end of year, they will work together to say a final score of readiness for that student. So yes, it is included. Yes. What I would say to you is that what we have not, at least I know my staff has not, communicated to the field that we were going to offer an opportunity for educators to create their own technology enhanced items or their own test. We have told the field we would be providing online training and support, including that functionality training or the practice test. But we have not communicated that we're going to create a way where teachers would be able to create their own tests. For us personally, we would offer training and everything before we would even consider putting out something where educators would be able to create their own tests. So our supports prior to that possibly being a vision for the future, which is not something that we're communicating to the field in any way and saying we're doing, but our initial step is this online functionality piece and then the practice test. Yes. Okay, very good question. She asked two questions. One, if I can provide some information on graduation points, and two, is there a way that a student could actually take a test without taking a course? The first, the graduation points. For our assessments, the assessments will have levels. So it's not the same, but kind of similar to levels we have now, where we have like limited, basic, proficient, advanced, and accelerated. There will be 5 levels, 1 through 5. And so once a student takes the assessment, ELA and math, and social studies and science, once they take their exams for high school, they will earn points towards graduation based on the level that they achieve. We have performance level descriptors for ELA and math already. So if a student, for example, takes a geometry exam, and then that student earns a level 3 on that exam, that student would bank 3 graduation points. But let's say that that student took a geometry exam and that student earned a level 2 or 1 on that exam. If they retook the test and then they earned a higher score, like a 3 or a 4, we would take the higher score and then bank their points. So we would not combine points, but we would bank the higher of the 2 points. So that's the gist of the graduation points. So instead of saying that students would have to, meet a minimum level of proficiency, we're saying they take the test and then they earn points towards graduation. Right now, the plan is they take 10 tests, they earn at minimum 25 points. And then what we've said is within the different disciplines, ELA, math, science, and social studies, they would have like minimum points they should at least have out of those disciplines, and then an overall set of points. Very similar to GED. For the GED test, they have subject area pieces. On a GED test, students have to get an overall minimum set of points, but then they have to have like minimum qualifications in each one of the areas. That's kind of how this is being operated as well. So that's the description of the points. Students, in essence, will earn points towards graduation based on their level of performance. If they get a level 3, if they get a level 4, a level 2, they bank those. Right now, we're looking at approximately 25 points towards graduation, okay? If you broke that down across the 10 tests, a student, in essence, could get or would have to get 3 or 6 threes, 3 twos, and 1 1 to get a 25. So it's not, if you look at it, a student can't get all 1s on the test and still graduate. A student couldn't get all 2s. They would have to have some diversity in terms of numbers. And then we're looking at some alternate pathways. Now, the second question you asked is basically about, can a student earn points towards graduation by taking a test without having to take the course? A student could potentially do that, but a district first would have to reevaluate and examine their credit flexibility policy, because this would only be able to occur through credit flexibility. If you recall, through the credit flexibility policy, one of the options you have is a test out opportunity. That test out could not be offered and extended for the OGT because it's an in-domain test. But now that the end of course tests are being used and they're directly tied to courses, if districts revise or refine their credit flexibility and offer that, then that's how the student could take the test without taking the course and earn points towards graduation. Yes? If you, once we have that, what we will do is have a concordance table that would show if you receive this score on an AP or IB test, it would be comparable to the points that we have on our state test. Yes? The 25 points at minimum would be a graduation requirement. If you received a recognition, for example, a recognition in terms of points would get you to maybe like somewhere with the 40 or 45 points, somewhere at the higher level. The 25 points is basically your screener towards graduation, minimum or not. You have 25 points, you don't. That's where, if you have less than 25 points, you couldn't graduate. Yes. The question on the table was, could a student excel in English, for example, and earn 5s? But then go to math or science or something and earn all 1s, and could they still graduate? And what I would say is they would have a challenge to do so and possibly not, and especially if they earn just all 1s. And the reason for it is because of what I just mentioned previously. The connection between GED and this system, you have to have an overall set of points. So they would most likely earn their 25 points. But within each content area, you would have to have a minimum set of points you have to get to graduate. So if they don't get those minimum sets of points for that content area, they still would put themselves in jeopardy of not graduating. So you can't just also rest on your laurels. Gentleman in the back. Will the credit flexibility, you said, will the end of course exam for that class that they choose not to take, will it be tied to a teacher? And we are looking at that right now. And right now, yes, but we're looking at how that will impact the teachers because of teacher evaluation, yes. And that's why we're not definitely saying it's going to be tied to a teacher at this time, because they're not necessarily taking that course. And that's where you want to tread cautiously with the credit flexibility, because once the student takes the test, tying that test to a teacher who didn't provide the instruction, and all of a sudden they take the test and they don't do well, that wouldn't be at a disadvantage. But what I'd also say is to really look at this carefully, because those students who are exercising credit flexibility, these students should, especially if they're looking at a test out, these students should have already showed evidence that they are truly advanced and ready for this. Okay? Any other questions? Yes. Oh, that's a very good question, and that would apply to algebra. And what I can tell you is we've been working with our accountability office, because basically what we are looking at to say is if we do have some students who are taking what's considered a high school course in middle school, they would take that course, that exam, bank the points towards graduation, and then the test score itself, we're looking at how that can be connected to that building level, so that the student wouldn't have to take that 8th grade test, that they could actually just take this test and then that would fulfill that requirement. So that one, a high school isn't getting credit for the work of what's going on for a student at the middle school level, and 2, you can get credit at that level without having to retake. This is something we're working with our accountability office, and that we also have to work with the feds on, because we know the provisions about out of grade testing. We also have the acceleration policy, so I also want districts, when they're trying to make these decisions, to be informed about that and to use that as a basis as well. And to also keep in mind that as we transition to the more rigorous standards, the expectations, for example, a physical science course and an algebra course are going to be more rigorous with the new standards than they are with the existing standards. So when you consider this, I encourage you to consider this as a case-by-case basis and not to make a whole class decision, because it should be based on the student's individual level of readiness and capability, not looking at trying to put a high school course overall at a 8th grade level. Yes? Then the question was in relation to our accommodations manual, and it comes to using the computer to make responses. And if a student shows that they don't have the ability to type on the computer, would they be able to have a scribe for that? And that provision already is addressed, that could be a possibility. And what I would suggest is to look at the accommodations manual that we have on the park website, because it will provide that information. Yes. Okay, so where I believe you are going is looking at the acceleration provision that was in the report card, which is giving credit to students who demonstrated accelerated status on assessment. And your question is, could a student actually take a high school end of course exam at the middle school level, and then based on their performance there, could we have a concordance table to say that it is of a higher level than what is expected on an 8th grade or middle school test, and give them credit? And what I would say is that's not an angle we've looked at this time to try to say that we would create a concordance table in that case. The first is the content in a science course is not comparable to a content in a high school course or math. So that's why we wouldn't look at doing a concordance table and to provide that. The other component would be, in this other case, this provision is there because it's really trying to acknowledge the acceleration that's provided to the students, and so that student may not be under an acceleration policy. Any other questions? Well, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It is approximately 1:49, and when I let you go, it'll be 1:50. And I not only did not keep you over, but I am letting you out early. I am not going to keep you to keep you. I hope you have a wonderful day. I believe it looks beautiful outside, so safe travels home, and thank you for coming to this event.